A new documentary now available on Amazon Prime and Apple TV offers a unique look at the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. The film Transition follows queer Australian filmmaker Jordan Bryan as he embeds with a Taliban unit he is documenting for the New York Times. But Bryan is undergoing his own transformation as a transgender man and has to keep his identity a secret. Bryan and co-director Monica Villamizar spoke to Amna Nawaz earlier this week about this turning point in Afghanistan and the risks of navigating a relationship with the Taliban.
Jordan Bryan and Monica Villamizar, thank you so much for joining us here on NewsHour. Pleasure to speak with you both.
Thanks for having us.
Jordan, I'm going to start with you because at the beginning of this film, you'd already been living in Afghanistan for a number of years, about 5 years, working as a filmmaker for the New York Times. You begin documenting one group of Taliban fighters after the Taliban retake control of the country, and at the same time, you are in the process of your own gender transition. At what point do you decide, I need to start turning the cameras the other way and start telling my own story as part of this?
I started the medical transition like 5 months before the Taliban took over. And objectively, as a filmmaker, I was thinking, you know, it could be interesting to document this process in a place like Afghanistan. And because I wanted to use my story to show the version of Afghanistan that I had experienced, which was a really beautiful, loving, welcoming Afghanistan.
And Monica, you have covered conflict around the world before this project. How did you come to collaborate with Jordan on this?
I had heard about him before as this Australian DP cinematographer who had really intimate access to the Taliban. So in my imagination, I was already wondering, who is this guy and how did he get such intimate access? And that's when we met, and Jordan said, you know, come here, but I'm not sure I want to do a film about myself. And I convinced him because I really think it takes enormous courage to do something so intimate about your own process, but I really thought his story was extraordinary.
Jordan, there's one scene in particular, though, which speaks to sort of the everyday navigation that you had to kind of manage when you're deciding whether to go through the men's security line or the women's security line at the airport. Here's a quick clip of that moment.
Should I go through the men's or the women's security check?
Woman.
Why?
Because if you wear mask and close your face, they will know you from me. Because they know me, that I'm with you, always.
I'm so sick of being stressed about this.
این مایک است.
مایک بکش.
خبرنگار هستم.
ایرک بکش.
Jordan, in a country like Afghanistan, especially at that particular time, how difficult were those kinds of choices for you to navigate?
It was terrifying, honestly, because there's no precedent for something like this. To my knowledge, there's not been another transgender person, Afghan or foreign, who was pre-surgery but living amongst the Taliban as their desired or their felt gender rather than their assigned at birth gender. I mean, you know, for Teddy as an Afghan, my Afghan cinematographer colleague, the stakes for him were so much higher. The trauma of having to bond with these Taliban fighters that we were filming with was far more difficult for him because they had destroyed his country. So as much as I was worried for myself, I was always also really worried for Teddy the whole time. What would they have done if they'd found out? I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to know.
And Monica, to broaden this out, we should point out Jordan was allowed to embed with these Taliban fighters because they believed he was male. You were not allowed to embed with them because you are a woman. But at the same time, this is a moment in Afghanistan's history when women and girls are being banned from public increasingly. What was that like for you as a storyteller?
I remember, Abna, when I was there, I had to be locked up in a hotel, not leaving, obviously, because I was so scared to be alone. And you can't really leave or go as a woman in these places without a male companion. And Jordan and the crew went on a car ride that took about 8 hours with multiple checkpoints. And I could not go through any of those checkpoints. They would just not allow a woman in the car. It was a very rural, remote area. And that was really hard, just to know that I had no access and I wished I could be there with them and I couldn't.
It's a very personal film, Jordan. It is your story, but it's also the story of this country transitioning from what it was to what it is today. There is a moment when you struggled in a way that a lot of journalists did with the idea of when and how to leave. Here's that moment.
So many foreigners have built, me included, we've built our careers, we've built our bank accounts, we've built our networks, we've built our status and our reputation off the misery of Afghanistan. For me, the least I can do is stick it out when the going gets tough and give back.
Jordan, you did eventually have to leave. I just wonder how you reflect on that decision now.
It was a big decision. I lived in Afghanistan for 6.5 years, and it's the most significant relationship I've ever had. It is an incredible place, and as a filmmaker, it's a gift. But you know, when Mon convinced me to make the film, I knew then that the film would mean that I would have to cut my ties with Afghanistan, most likely for the foreseeable future at least. And you know, I'm hoping that the film adds value to the world and adds conversations to people that make it worth having to end that relationship for a while.
Monica, what do you want people to take away from this film?
For me personally, I just admire what reporters in war zones do. I want people to take away from it that they watch it and they know what a hard sacrifice on a personal level it is to go to these war zones and report, and how important it is that we keep on doing this, because there are many urgent things happening in the world, in Ukraine, in Gaza, in many places. And the job that we do is important, and we all sacrifice parts of our personal lives in order to do this. And I think, you know, it's almost like a love letter to journalism, because I think it's a profession that is so worth it.
Monica Villamizar and Jordan Bryan, thank you so very much for joining us. Pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.